So one of the reasons why I truly ran for Secretary of State was, and I told the story I think probably on the campaign trail, was that I was, during the pandemic, I was home, sitting across from my husband, who is a successful CPA, managing partner, he's a business owner, and a banker called my husband and said, hey man, you gotta get this PPP money, you know? And they were making, you know, bankers were making these phone calls to these very prominent business people. Well, no one was calling small nonprofits, women-owned, minority-owned businesses. Nobody was getting those phone calls. And it just really ticked me off, you know, because I sit on a bank board. I called that same banker that called my husband. I'm like, I'm on your board. Why aren't you calling nonprofits? Are nonprofits eligible? He's like, oh, yeah, I think y'all are eligible. We'll sign up. I'm like, well, thank you, we will. And I then called every other private foundation in the state of Arkansas. I called the Small Business Administration. I called Arkansas Business. I'm like, if we're not telling people, if we're not like really telling people this means you. This means you, women business owner. This means you, minority business owner. This opportunity is for you, because those other folks are not getting, they're not picking up they're not Rolodexing that. And I thought to myself, like the first time, I'm like, you know, who could have been a really strong shepherd of this message? Well, the Secretary of State has a whole Rolodex of every business in the state of Arkansas. You know, again, it's like, those are like small things that I felt like our state government could have done a better job of making sure that message got to the right people. You know, they could have been an advocate for businesses across the state. I just saw it as an opportunity to really talk about that. So that's a little context about the Women's Foundation of Arkansas, and really even why I was motivated to run for, I wasn't running against anybody, I was running for something. I was really running to make sure that people in Arkansas, vulnerable people, populations that traditionally don't get support, are getting support. And that is what we do for women and girls. We really are the one organization. We do not have a competitor. There's not another women's foundation in our state that does this work, and so we really kind of are an outlier in this work. Did I go the wrong way? Okay, so the Women's Foundation of Arkansas, actually, it was in the 2023 legislative session, because of our work to support women business owners and women entrepreneurs. We got a phone call from the then person in the state government that said, hey, did you know there's going to be a piece of legislation filed that's going to eliminate the division of women and minority business owners? That was in 2023. And I was like, what? That's crazy. They're like, no, but because we work in the state government, we can't say anything about it. So it just so happened that I had just run for office. I had a little bit of name recognition. I knew a lot of people at the state capitol. I called my board, and I was like, I know that this is something that we're not ever comfortable with. We're not partisan. We don't really show up a lot at the state capitol, but this absolutely impacts our work. That is a state agency that we have been doing collaborative work with for many years to talk about women and minority business owners. Like, if we don't speak up, who is going to speak up? Like, I mean, this is literally the work of our foundation. And the board's like, absolutely, we have to say something. So we kind of quickly mobilized, and we somehow became the front face of public opposition to a Senate bill that was filed. And it was to eliminate any state agency that had to do with supporting women, minorities, and I'm trying to think what the definition then was. Kind of, it was minority populations. And we were able to bring a giant coalition together, and ultimately the bill failed like in the 11th hour. We were able to prevent that bill from passing in 2023.
Thank you.
Well, that was 2023. And that was a different political environment, right? We had a state administration that we have now, but the politics were very different. Different federal administration, right? But we were successful in just this one bill in 2023, and as an organization, we thought to ourselves, like, we really need to be better prepared for the next legislative session. And we need to be able to like make sure that we don't expend our political and social capital unless it really is aligned with our work. So we as an organization developed a policy framework, okay? And so the guiding policy principle is that we endorse legislation that directly and positively impacts women business owners, girls in STEM, and working moms. Because these are all people that we're working for on a daily basis, right? Those categories, we define them very specifically. We oppose legislation that directly harms these women and girls in Arkansas. So this is kind of our, not just our framework, but our guardrails as an organization, because we are nonpartisan and we are a nonprofit. And I got the word women in my title. So it's difficult in the state of Arkansas to do this work if you don't have kind of guardrails to protect you. So, Annabeth, what do you do? Like, well, I work for women business owners. I work for girls in STEM. I work for working moms. Do you have a problem with any of those groups? Do you have a problem with working moms in Arkansas? Do you have a problem with girls in STEM? Do you have a problem with women business owners? No one's going to really say, come right out to my face, that they have a problem with those, right? So we built this framework to kind of protect us. And we also kind of identified how will we behave. Are we going to, if we need to oppose something, flag something, appreciate, or endorse? Because I'll tell you something else, doing legislative advocacy, if you only show up to oppose, you're going to start losing friends really quickly. You got to show up for other stuff as well. And we knew that, So we really were like thoughtful about, okay, we're going to develop this framework. We actually hired a contractor, a policy analyst in the 2025 session to start reading bills that were filed, looking out for things. And of course, the Senate, it was Senate Bill 3 in 2023. It got reimagined in 2025. And here's the tricky thing that they did, because it got killed in 2023 because technically veterans are minorities. So the state of Arkansas decided that we're just going to say, we specifically don't want anything, we don't want any state entity supporting women or minorities except veterans. We want to support veterans, but we don't want to support women and minorities. Wow. And the political climate is a lot, and there wasn't, okay, well, veterans are still protected, but women and minorities aren't. And that, so we, again, mounted an opposition. It had to look a lot different because some of the people that were supportive that 2 years ago were kind of quiet this year. So I'll kind of move on to that. But this is our programmatic research priorities. Women, we have a lot of research about women business owners. We have a lot of research about girls in STEM, and we're actually conducting research right now about working moms because we do research as a nonprofit. We scored our bills based on their impact on women and girls. And so we had a lot of strategies this year that were some things that we've already been doing and some things that we really were very intentional on. We had a lot of direct legislator contact. We had a lot of comms and media strategy. We had partners and stakeholders. Direct advocacy with lawmakers and administration. There's like this miseducation in the nonprofit sector that you can't do legislative advocacy. That's just not true. It's not true. If anything, you should be educating your elected officials about what's happening in their backyards, right? They should be getting that information from us in Arkansas, not from legislative conferences that they're going to. They're getting hand-canned legislation because that is what's happening. All of our legislators, both sides of the aisle, they get per diems, travel per diems, they love to go to conferences, and they're just getting hand legislation. So if you as a nonprofit or as a community organization aren't saying, here are the problems in Garland County, here are the problems in Hot Springs, like they're not getting it from anybody else. And you guys are folks that know what's happening in your community. So we really wanted to focus on building relationships we focused on women legislators. We provided research and memos. We sent correspondence. We were present at the Capitol. We actually hosted a legislative welcome breakfast for all female legislators, all female head, like the top females in each state agency. We invited the governor. We invited a lot of different people in to come to a welcome breakfast. cost us less than $100 to host that breakfast, Wow. It was like pastries, this or that. But again, and what's really crazy, we've done this for 2 or 3 years in a row, and we don't have a political agenda. It's more like, hey, come before your first meeting of the day, right at the beginning of the session, and it's been a very well-attended event. And so at the beginning of the session, like, they're thinking about us, right? Oh, they got that, a lovely croissant from, Women's Foundation of Arkansas, right? So we kind of host that, we get them in and out, we get them some good information. Communications, so we got newsletter, traditional media, we needed to use oral letters of support or opposition. Roby Brock and I have a really great relationship, and so we kind of have an open invitation if we need to go on his show and to talk about things that are impacting women and girls in the economy. Other folks kind of know that, if we have something to say, that we've got an invitation, but we've got some really great media friends to help us out. Collaborate with coalition partners, so have briefing sessions, conducting ROSI analysis. ROSI stands for Who's Responsible, Accountable, Consult, and Inform. Facilitate outreach meetings, share resources, right? So again, we can't say yes to everybody, but I saw on your agenda that you're gonna have KISA with Arkansas Advocates in October, right? So again, we pay attention to what Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families are doing. They pay attention to what we're doing. Some of us kind of decide, like, who's the better person to be the front face of this, right? And how can we support behind the scenes if you need other support to do this very, very work? So again, it's really understanding who your stakeholders are at any given time in the legislative session. So again, the Senate Bill 71 of 2023, it's Senate Bill 3. So I went down to the Capitol and I gave public testimony. And again, I can do that in the nonprofit sector. Here's what's interesting, private foundations cannot. Public foundations can. So here I am, we're like the little engine that could. We're this little public foundation. We're not the Walton Foundation, we're not the Rockefeller Foundation, we're not Tyson, we're not Delta Dental. I think those are all private foundations, and they legally are not allowed to go down and give public testimony. They're like, the way that those foundations are set up are a little bit differently. So they actually have their hands are really tied. And so again, we're like a little public foundation that we can navigate this space better than most. And so we gave testimony in opposition. And really this year, I just instinctively knew that the arguments that we used 2 years ago just weren't gonna float. Caring about women business owners, not so much. The thing that they cared more about this year actually was girls in STEM. Because we host a conference for 8th grade girls every year. We promote it in public schools. Public schools use their school buses and teachers' time to have chaperone these students. They were like, does that mean you're out, like schools in rural Arkansas that don't have STEM opportunities can no longer send girl students to this? And they're like, no, that's not what the intention is. Like, but that's what you're saying, because that's a public resource. And ultimately, so Senate Bill 3, we opposed, and we talked. I gave an opinion. I wrote an opinion piece that was in Talk Business, the online. I gave public testimony. We sent letters to all of the representatives, including the sponsors. 2 years ago, every single female legislator, no matter the aisle, voted against the passage of this very same bill. This year, a female co-sponsored it.
Awesome.
So again, just to show you the change in the legislative session, right? So that's my letter to the female representative that I'm like, ma'am, have you considered, the impact on girls in STEM? So we opposed that bill. We flagged the access bill from the governor's administration, the big overhaul. So 2 years ago, they did an overhaul. The first was LEARNS Act. This session, it was access. And we did, we just kind of flagged it because it really didn't specifically call out women and girls, and it was really just replicating what the federal government was going to do. So we kind of knew that it wasn't going to be worth our time to really try to mount an opposition to it, because it was almost verbatim some of the federal legislation against like DEI, and this was impacting higher ed. But even though we accessed it, I still showed up. And so this is a text chain between me and my legislative analyst that was there. I was like, I made it, I'm behind you on the right. And she just said, I was disappointed the committee didn't even question stuff about DEI in the bill. Not one single state representative asked a question about how it would impact DEI. And I just said, no, they did not. But I was in the room, you know, a lot of people saw me there. And again, just by sometimes showing up, like they're looking around like who was in the room, right? Like who shows up. So I was there for that committee hearing when they were debating the access bill. We also did a lot of appreciate good bills for women. And we appreciated bills on the right and the left, Democrats and Republicans, because again, like we need to continue to develop those relationships. There was a bill passed that was, let's see here. These are, so House Bill 1076 was creating Caring for Caregivers Act, 10,004, Pilkington and Davis, that was to require Medicaid coverage for postpartum mothers for 1 year after giving birth. Pilkington and Urban, require reimbursement for remote ultrasounds, Medicaid, again, so you can see Dems, Republicans, and we appreciated those. Yes, and it just said, what are we gonna do? We're gonna, like over here, I would actually go to in person and say thank you to them, write and send a thank you note, appreciate in person, a thank you note or a letter for that person. Another one of our, I can't remember if it was a senator or a state rep, and they did a female veterans getting license plates, you know, when we said thank you for that. So you have to show up for everything. You can't just take a stand on one thing. You gotta show interest and make sure that you're developing relationships with anybody and everybody that's doing things for women and girls. Okay, and again, you can see, here's a sample letter that I sent to folks, just like we were excited to see that you filed this bill for child tax care credits. I talked about our mission is to improve economic security. So we were really proud of like how much more organized we were this legislative session. Again, this is a picture from our legislative breakfast that we hosted, all the folks that attended there. And again, in a kind of crazy session, we had every single female member of the House showed up and they did a resolution recognizing International Women's Day. All signed it. It was a resolution honoring the Women's Foundation of Arkansas, and we snuck in there some of the things that we're about. All their signatures are on it, you know. So, and this is us up here in the gallery, you know. So we did have some small wins too. You know, there's some hard parts and there's some small wins. So, but bipartisan credibility and influence and policy leadership amongst peers are critical to success in the policy advocacy landscape. So those are some small wins for us. What else do I have here? Oh, and then we were contacted. This is when you know like small things really matter. So this is Representative Kendra. She's out of Northwest Arkansas. Woman in the green jacket here, and she's sitting beside Denise Innit. So that's a Republican on the right, that's a Democrat on the left. And they were invited to speak at the Clinton Presidential Center. Well, Kendra, I'm just blanking on her last name right now, I apologize. She contacted our office and we would write her talking points for this. So a Republican asked us to write talking points to do a speaking thing. And again, that's because we're a trusted entity, you know, of like what we can do. So we were really proud of that she would reach out to us. Again, we thought like that's a win. Like this is her second, she was freshman 2 years ago. So this is her second session, but she's been showing up. We're very responsive. So, you know, again, we're like, well, this is a person we can call upon if we need to sit down and have a conversation, right? Something we also do as a foundation is we actually take our research to Washington, D.C. I actually would tell you that we have better relationships with our national delegation than some of our state house folks. Again, I was in DC 2 weeks ago for it was funny, the Women's Foundation of Arkansas is a part of a larger network of women's funds. They have a biennial conference in DC, it's called Feminist Funded. And they had a policy action day that they were gonna call it Feminist Rising on the Hill. And I was like, well, I can't get into any of my offices if I sat here with the feminist funding. But I can actually pick up the phone, call French Hill, call Senator Bozeman, and they will immediately take a meeting with us. I don't have to do it under the guise of, I just say, hey, it's Women's Foundation of Arkansas, can we get a meeting? And so our board member and two board members and a staff member were up there in March, met with our entire delegation, and really putting in front of them the work that we're doing, a lot of research, and that also just kind of strengthens our standing in this space. And so we're very intentional about always making it to DC at least once a year to make sure that that information about the work that we're doing is showing up in those offices. Again, and that's Congressman Westerman ended up inviting our team to do an after-hours tour of the nation's capital. We spent 3 hours with our staff. And it's fun. Foundations on the Hill is actually a 2-3 days with foundations from across the country. And this gentleman here over here with our staff, he works with the Rockefeller Foundation, and again, because they're private, they always ask us, the WFA, to set up meetings because they know that the congressional delegation is more responsive to our office than other offices. So again, small little things like that, but it's all about nurturing relationships. So again, after hours tour with the congressman, that was just some fun stuff. Foundations on the Hill, and Steve. So again, it's really funny. Congressman Womack put it in February. Arkansas philanthropic foundations do remarkable work in our great state. I appreciate hearing more about the Women's Foundation of Arkansas to empower young girls in STEAM fields and women's small STEAM. It's okay, get that right.
Oh,
But they didn't even mention the Rockefeller Foundation. He just mentioned the Women's Foundation.
Right.
And this is his newsletter that he sends out to, we were kind of chuckling to ourselves that we got a shout out and the Rockefeller Foundation didn't get a shout out. But again, our work kind of speaks for itself. But looking backwards at the broader landscape, this is the sad part. When I was asked to do a legislative update with Romy Brock, and we talked about how did women fare in this last legislative session. Not well. The answer is not well. The state has now eliminated all state support for any programs that support women and minorities. So they eliminated the division of women and minority on business owners. So no, you can't get certified as a
Can't certify as a minority. Yes.
Yeah, business owner in the state of Arkansas anymore. They've also eliminated at all public universities, they've eliminated scholarships, any scholarship that existed. There were a few, but any scholarship that existed just for women or just for minorities, those have all been eliminated. We even were contacted by the Arkansas Community Foundation. They would not honor our donor fund for a scholarship because the Community Foundation also they're following Supreme Court precedent. They're saying that we can't have scholarships that are just for women or minorities. So it's been a chilling effect. So again, that's a reality right now with the state. Currently, to promote our 8th grade girl conference. When we were fighting that last bill, Representative Mary Bentley, who co-authored it, she went down to the well, and on the final day said, and I promise you, this will not impact girls in STEM programming. We have her on record saying that because that was kind of sticking point words that we had said. Well, the University of Arkansas Little Rock will not promote our program anymore for 8th grade girls. University of Arkansas Fort Smith will no longer allow us to set up a booth promoting our programs for girls.
Right.
So we can now though go back and say, you said it wasn't going to do this, but it absolutely, here are the things that it has impacted. So again, I know that doesn't feel like a win, but we actually have her on record saying that, and they can fix it. Like, they can fix the things that impacted women and girls, right? So, additionally, like I was telling Christy, like, we've seen a lot of funding dry up for women serving nonprofits, and we are not alone in that. A lot of nonprofits are experiencing that. This year has just been kind of a wild, crazy year. But a lot of corporate sponsorships are drying up because of the chilling effect that corporations feel like women are no longer safe investments. So again, it's really difficult and challenging, but we're having the same conversations with other nonprofits. So there's a loss of funding with corporate sponsorships and large grants. We've been asked by private foundations to scrub our website and to not mention the work that we do specifically for Black women entrepreneurs or Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. And like, can you remove the word female? Like, well, I can't take the word women's out of our title. But I mean, that's what's happening right now in the nonprofit and the foundation landscape. But all of this, we just kind of have to kind of keep track of, and then we bring that to the attention of the friends that we have. So I appreciate everyone's yeah, I'm mad about it too, but I think that I could do something about it, right? I can go back to again, the state rep that said this will not impact girls. It's like, yes, it did. This is how it impacted it. Like, we had less schools apply. We couldn't go to the state to promote this. So you said that that was not your intention, but that was the unintended consequence. Now help us fix it.
Can I ask you a question? What is the motivation? Where is it coming from?
So there's a lot of schools of thought on that. And I'm wearing my professional hat right now.
Gotcha.
So what I would say is that I think it is if you do something special for this person, then you're discriminating on it. That's the line. But whoever said one size fits all worked for everybody? Nobody ever said that, because one size doesn't fit all. Like, right? That's not right. So, but I think what we know is that embedded in that is deep-seated fear of like a loss of power for people that hold it.
Yes.
Right? There's not enough to share, and there's not enough resources for all, and that's not the case. The words DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, these words mean, as a framework, have actually only been popular for 4 or 5 years. Before, so don't get tripped up on words.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to get tripped on words. I mean, did you hear DEI before 5 years ago?
No.
No, people were just doing the work. They just were.
Right.
So we could, cut off our nose to spite our face. Like, okay, I'll call it something different. I'm working for marginalized communities in Southeast Arkansas. Disadvantaged business owners, I'll call it something. We will keep doing this work. And again, I will tell you, our marginalized populations have been dealing with this for a lot longer than, other people were like, I'm so aghast that we would be behaving this way. Like, that this discrimination exists. Like, discrimination has always existed. They're just finding new ways, to do it. So again, we just have to really make sure that we are organized, we're thoughtful, we're intentional, we're getting data and research to back it up. And so the Women's Foundation of Arkansas, that's what we're doing. We in a time where we're really worried about our programs for now, our portfolio of direct service programs, where we can double down on our research. Like, we can double down on our research, and we had a bank that had been supporting an internship program. We host a program called the Juana Bird's Internship Program, named after our first Black board president. It's to help women of color that are in college or pursuing graduate degrees get into high-paying internships. And we matched them with companies. The company that had been supporting the program since its inception, their female CEO retired. Male CEO came in, like, I don't know, this is really a fit. He said, but I know we've committed to helping, supporting, so we don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, great. Well, what if we do collaborate on a research project together. A research about women in rural banking. And so they're moving their funds from this project to a different project. But again, what I know is that will probably help me kind of build up resources in preparation for the next legislative session. So this bank is going to they're giving us more money. They're going to give us more money to do this research project that I'm then going to take to DC, and I'm going to take to all these legislators and talk about, how we got to help women in rural Arkansas get access to financial solutions. So again, there are ebbs and flows to this type of work, and you just have to be creative right now in this time frame. So I think that I'm at the end of my slide, but I'm happy to answer questions about what we did, how we did it, lots of questions, yes. And y'all watching my time? I know y'all got other
good.
Okay, great, sure.
I was just wondering, have you at all, as you're talking to the as a woman, what is she?
So
She has a daughter. I mean,
yeah, so, and I actually talked to the previous administration. We worked collaboratively along for years. In fact, at the end of 2022, Governor Hutchinson, we had gone to him and said, "Sir, don't you want to be the guy that gets credit for reinstating the Women's Commission?" Arkansas hadn't had a Women's Commission in 50 years. Majority of other states in the United States permanently house women's commissions that do, and we hadn't had one in 50 years. So the WFA respectfully asked, would you reinstate it? We will actually pay for the work that it produces, the research. And so we had this wonderful collaboration, and it came out at the end of 2022. Well, that was the research project that kind of took us into the 2023 legislative session. But we get in a new administration, and I would say the new administration's, her first year was to really push through the LEARNS Act, right? And so replacing all state agencies, there's a lot of turnover, a lot of that institutional knowledge, and the short answer now is this administration isn't working as closely with the nonprofit sector. But I've talked to some people well, then we're just not trying hard enough. So we're really trying hard to make a good relationship with the governor, to talk about things, because the governor, after 2022, 2023, she did take interest in maternal health. Arkansas, if you don't know, we lead the country in maternal mortality and maternal morbidity. The majority of our state is a maternal health care desert. I mean, these are things that you just cannot escape. And so she is really taking an active interest in that. And so that's good. That's really, really good. And we should applaud our governor for doing that. She needs to expand postpartum Medicaid till 12 months. That's the one thing we haven't done in our state. Every other state has it, so that's something that we keep asking for and keep pushing for. All the experts on our maternal health commission are all telling the same thing. So we're working on that. But again, it's, we're just going to have to try harder to approach. And so that's something that we've kind of been tasked with this year, is to really develop and build a rapport and build relationships within her administration. She also offered, it's a family leave for state employees. Prior to her administration, state employees didn't have, male or female, didn't have paid leave. So, then there are some things there, and it's really highlighting that and giving credit where credit is due, and then from there building a relationship. So, we are slowly but surely trying to build that and work on that. Yes.
Annabeth, thank you so much. I watched you on Robbie Rock on Talk Politics, and I was so impressed because you represented women across the state of Arkansas so well, and you were to be applauded for that. The question the downside was, I was thinking, for minorities in the state of Arkansas, we are being so disrespected and that there's no way to turn. So if we have a nonprofit and you try to get grant funding, we're cut off. Because we can't say, we're a minority community, so the grant. I applied for a grant and it came back saying I was refused because of the president's executive order against DEI. So I can't say minority. Luckily, they asked me to revise the application, wipe out all the words that had anything to do, and this was mentioning a history of Harriet Tubman. Could I wipe her name off? I mean, it's so ridiculous that it is so disrespectful. How do we get past this? Where's the loophole for communities of color? For the African American community, we're 15% of the population. Should we be ignored? So, is there a way that we can use the Christian base, our church community to get through to this legislature that we have value and we operate and we can provide value to the state? How can you guide us?
So there's a lot in that question. Because I feel like it's
Excuse the emotion.
there's a multi-pronged approach to it, you know, because in our portfolio work, we have a lot of programs specifically for communities of color, for Black women, for brown women, and we, as the Women's Foundation of Arkansas, you know, you guys saw us taking pictures. A lot of people, I recognize we have a lot of position of power and influence. And where do we stand right now to ensure that we are an intermediary to ensure that grassroots organizations led by people of color are getting the funding that they need? So something that we know we can do, this is a very real example, we know of a nonprofit in Northwest Arkansas, female-led, led by a Hispanic woman. You know, they were experiencing mass loss of funding. Like there are a lot in Northwest Arkansas. A lot of Hispanic nonprofits again have gone under. I mean, there's a true fear. I mean, there is deep depression in Northwest Arkansas for immigrant communities, nonprofits of color, of color. So we were able to go to their large private foundations and said, like, we'd like to do some work in this community, and we'd like to identify a partner to do it. And we're going to serve entrepreneurs, underserved entrepreneurs, and we worked on the language, got the language, we negotiated, and we were able to act as an intermediary to get them the exact funding that they needed and identify them and just pushed it through. Okay. So, and we can do that in other areas. And so I think one answer is talking to trusted collaborators and allies, and how can you create those partnerships that help everyone survive?
Okay.
Do you know, it helps everyone survive. The other thing is, I've been telling a lot of people, individuals, I was telling Chrissy, like right now, in the foreseeable future, we cannot, as a sector and communities, depend on state funding, federal funding, even large grant funding. We're really gonna have, if you are already a giving person, and Arkansans are very giving people. We actually give a lot, but if you have something that you care about, like a program or an organization that you care about, like now's the time not to abandon those organizations. Now's the time to really think about that. And then on the leadership side, it is really developing those relationships here in your community. You can't just show up and talk to them and be angry in every other odd year from January to April. You need to be having conversations with them right now, their home and their districts, and you need to be like meeting them, developing trust, talking about reciprocity, like what can we work on together, how can we be successful. And again, this is something that right now in a polarizing time, people aren't good at. Everyone is so angry, but that's causing us to lose a lot of ground. So again, I want to think about what's happening, and specifically for women, because that's something I've been an advocate for women and girls for a really long time. I'm upset. I am devastated. But if I just stay home and I don't attempt to make that relationship with the governor, if I don't attempt to do that, then I am not being of service to women and girls in Arkansas. So, that's the trick. It's a multi-pronged approach. And again, finding the intermediaries, developing, or really trying to identify a community that is hurting, and what are ways to lift it up and to support them. And then also those relationships, building the social capital in your backyard. And again, I would encourage everyone too to talk to your neighbor, right? This is something that I wrote about this recently. Chrissy talked, and I were talking about this, but after the election, I was, selected to become a presidential leadership scholar, and I completed this program a year and a half ago. It's a large global community of people across the country, across the world, different socioeconomic, different political spectrums, and everyone's been talking about the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I shared a really personal story when I ran for office, and I was in part of our state. I didn't, as a statewide candidate, I often didn't do neighborhood canvassing just because of the time. Like I would come to large groups where you could try to get a mass amount of people, but a few times I'd get on board with some other candidates and we would do some neighborhood canvassing. And we had our voter rolls in front of us. And someone said, like, don't knock on that door. That's not someone we should worry about. They were flying an American flag, and they had a veteran sticker, actually a Marine Corps sticker. I fly an American flag in front of my house, and my husband is a Marine combat veteran. I'm like, I'm gonna go knock on that damn door. And I don't care if they're angry, because I got a D beside my name. Like, I think we probably have something in common. And I think in a very basic, like, a lot of us have forgotten, like, to do that. Like, you look for those outlying things, and you're not even just a talk state. We used to be a state that got a lot of things done because we would just come together and talk to each other. And so I think that that's really important right now. I've just given her a long answer, but
I appreciate it, I love it.
that is my response to the question she gave me. So, yes. Anything else? Again, I'm so sorry I'm taking up too much time. Yeah.
This has been very informative, thank you, and you're an excellent public speaker. One of the things when you were guiding here on that collaboration and talking with not depending on government funding is building those relationships that complement, like he's talking with other organizations, not duplicate, but complement. That also is a real plus for private donors, because it leverages their fund. They see that it's a collaborative and all ships are rising, it's just not centered on one. So
That's right.
Thank you for offering that.
Join me in thanking